Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Friday, May 27th, 2022. If you'd like additional weather information, you can always go online to weather.gov. It'll take you to a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii to the lower left, and it's a point-and-click interactive map that has all sorts of information. Forecast, watches, warnings, advisories for anywhere in the country, plus additional information that deals with water levels, air quality, satellite maps, things like that as you poke around. But certainly take a moment and check it out sometime if you can. Well, here in Alaska, looking ahead to Memorial Day weekend, it's going to be a very warm and very dry one, especially across the southern half of the state. We're going to see temperatures in many areas getting up above 70, could even see an isolated 80-degree reading here or there, especially Saturday into Sunday across south central areas. But with the very warm and very dry conditions comes very high fire danger. And also, statewide river levels are running high from the snow melt. We've had near record snow pack from the recent winter, and with these warmer temperatures, that's going to accelerate the snow melt from the higher elevations. So river levels are going to remain high. We do have red flag warnings that are in effect this Friday afternoon and evening. Certainly, it would be best any sort of outdoor recreating to avoid having any sort of outdoor open fire or participating in any activities that could cause a spark. Flood advisories continue on the Innoko and Gulkana rivers. The Innoko River is receding. Maybe by the course of this weekend, things there should get a little closer to normal. The runway there improving, but Gulkana, that river is going to stay up here through at least the early part of June. And looking at a couple of the webcams this afternoon, way up there along the Arctic coast, Utqiagvik is seeing light snow and fog, a temperature at 30 degrees. Rather inclement weather like that along the Arctic coast expected this holiday weekend through the North Slope. Down through south central areas in the southwest interior, we have high pressure building in aloft, and this is going to bring very warm temperatures. As of early afternoon, Palmer is mostly sunny, 70 degrees, and some areas through the Mat-Su Valley could approach 80 degrees this holiday weekend. Quick check of the Alaska River breakup map. The rivers are generally open in the southern two-thirds of the state. Still have yet to break free up there along the North Slope. Nevertheless, if you're doing any camping, refrain from camping on those gravel bars of the rivers. That's what the forecast office in Fairbanks wants to advise people, because we do expect high river levels to continue with additional rapid snowmelt with these warm temperatures. There is a red flag warning in effect for areas of the southwest along the west arm of the Alaska Range, including the west side of the Kenai Peninsula, Anchorage Bowl, on up through the Mat-Su Valley through 10 o'clock this Friday evening. We expect it to get breezy here early this evening with some wind gusts of 20 to 25 miles an hour. So that's going to make for some very high fire danger. And even though the winds may not be quite as breezy for Saturday or Sunday, with the very warm temperatures, in fact, temperatures may be a few degrees warmer here Saturday and Sunday in the 70s to near 80 degrees in these areas, it's going to keep the fire danger very high across especially the southern parts of the state. Taking a look at the fire danger, this is the forecast going into Saturday. Looking at the grass, adjective grass is the primary carrier of fire in the early fire season, and we see very high fire danger south of the Brooks Range and as well as south of the Alaska Range, and all through these areas we have very high fire danger, so it's best to be cautious and refrain from any sort of outdoor burning. Check the chains on trailers, make sure they're not dragging on the pavement and causing sparks, because it doesn't take much to start a wildfire. And looking at the satellite image, we can see the clearing across the southwest interior, south central areas. Still some cloudiness and showers there, south end of the Panhandle and up toward the north end of Haida Gwaii, and then we see extensive cloud cover across North Slope and back there through the northwest Arctic coast, where there is some light snow and fog occurring as well. Widespread areas of fog are out over the water of not just the Gulf, but the Bering Sea on up through the Bering Strait and Chukchi Sea, we have areas of low stratus and fog. That's what happens this time of year, especially when we have a high pressure in place, big high there centered over the central Bering with the mid-upper level high aloft, extending into the southwest interior. That's what's allowing temperatures to really warm as we go through tonight. Notice not a whole lot of change in the overall pattern. We'll continue to see some areas of lower clouds and fog and a little light snow there along the northern Arctic coast. Saturday, a little bit of heat low develops there near Fairbanks, Yukon Flats, that area, as these temperatures warm through the Yukon Valley on either side of the Alaska Range. Could even be an isolated thunder shower pop-up, especially by the time we get into Sunday afternoon, eastern part of the Alaska Range toward the Alcan border as well. Looking at temperatures, lows are going to be on the mild side. In the 40s, Anchorage may not get much below 50-ish, and for Saturday, widespread 70s. In fact, some of these temperatures may be a little understated. I think Anchorage could definitely be up at least into the lower 70s. Mid-upper 70s with an isolated 80-degree reading in the Mat-Su Valley. Sunday morning lows similar again, 40s to a few areas not getting much below 50. South central areas are going to again be in the 60s and 70s on Sunday afternoon. 60s with some 70s there in the northern panhandle, 71 at Juneau, 75 Haines, Skagway areas, so some very warm temperatures there up through the northern panhandle. Well, looking farther north, lows tonight will be in the upper 20s along the northwest Arctic coast, but remaining above 40 through the middle upper Yukon Valley. And look at the temperature spread. Temperatures only around freezing up there around Utqiagvik, but as you get down there through the Yukon Valley, Tanana, as well as Fairbanks, Yukon Flats are going to be easily lower mid-70s. For Sunday morning, lows below freezing in the 20s there along the Arctic coast, but again, lows generally near or just above 40 through the Yukon Valley. And temperatures again getting back up in the 60s and 70s. Still cooler though near the coastal areas. There, the Seward Peninsula confined to the 30s just because the water there, lower Chukchi Sea, still some ice and still very cool there. Across the southwest, we're looking for lows in the 30s to lower 40s, near 40 or so there along the Aleutian chain. Saturday afternoon, temperatures are going to get back up into the 70s along the west side of the Alaska Range, 60s there at Bethel, and as we go into Sunday morning, lows will generally stop around or just above 40 there up through the Kuskokwim River Basin, and around and just above 40 there through the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian chain. Temperatures again will be back up in the 60s and 70s across the interior. And looking at the extended temperature forecast, June 2nd through the 6th, much above normal temperatures are anticipated, again centered on southwest Alaska. Much of the state is going to see above normal temperatures. This does not bode well for fire danger because we're not anticipating much in the way of precipitation in this time frame here over the next week or so. And so be very cautious with any thought or use of fire. There could be a little bit of an uptick in precipitation chances across areas of the Alaska Range through the east and northeast, and there, I imagine, could be a little convection leading to some scattered showers and a few isolated thunderstorms at times. But otherwise, we're not expecting any widespread rain to delete the fire threat.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, let's look at your aviation weather here as we go into the Memorial Day weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Main weather feature, as I've been speaking for the past few days, is going to be this ridge of high pressure, especially noted in the mid and upper atmosphere that's going to be building in from off the central Bering across the southwest interior into south central areas. This is going to allow for some very warm and dry conditions, very high fire danger, southern half of the state here going through the holiday weekend. Now, along the west coast, with this high in place, it's going to keep areas of IFR conditions, lower cloud cover, fog, even some lighter precipitation, especially up there along the north slope there Saturday morning. Areas of the Gulf, we do see widespread IFR conditions out over the waters there of the Gulf, the cooler waters. Same thing Saturday afternoon. We'll see the IFR conditions there along the Arctic coast, north slope back through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, with IFR conditions generally remaining offshore there throughout the Gulf coast region, but plenty of VFR conditions for the interior. And Sunday morning, widespread IFR conditions expected from along the North Slope, Arctic coast extending southwestward across the Seward Peninsula, along the southwest coast and much of the Aleutian Chain and up through the Alaska Peninsula, with IFR conditions nudging a little northward up there through the northern Gulf Coast. And for Sunday afternoon, still a fair amount of VFR conditions across the mainland, maybe a little relaxation in area coverage of the IFR conditions there out over the Bering, but still have VFR conditions there along the North Slope and northern Arctic coast. Could be some cumulus buildups with perhaps an isolated thunder shower popping up at the daytime heating Sunday afternoon there, the mid-upper Tanana Valley and some of the surrounding mountains there in the 40-mile Gold Country. And then areas of the Gulf, still rather widespread IFR conditions, especially out over the water there. But for passes, we do anticipate Anaktuvik as well as Adigan Pass to generally remain VFR, but if you are flying further north and west of the north entrance, as you go further north and west along the North Slope, you will encounter IFR conditions. Further south, along the western arm of the Alaska Range, we expect VFR conditions at Lake Clark and Merrill, as well as at Rainy Pass. And as we round up through the central Alaska Range and heading east from Windy Pass through Isabel and Mentasta Passes, we do anticipate VFR conditions to be widespread and hold there as well. A little further south and west, could start out with a little MVFR conditions at Tanita in the morning on Saturday, otherwise giving way to VFR. And generally, VFR conditions are expected to hold at Portage Pass, both at the west and east entrances. And then as we look at the northern end of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White should also see VFR conditions hold throughout the day on Saturday. And looking at freezing levels, because of this high pressure, and especially anchored there in the mid-upper levels of the atmosphere, we see freezing levels well above 6,000 feet across much of the mainland, especially centered on the southwest and south central areas. Coolest air is up there to the north, the Arctic coast, and on up into the Beaufort Sea. Also a dip in the freezing levels there out through northwest Canada. But otherwise, again, the main weather story being the warmer temperatures and very dry conditions across the southern half of the mainland. There could be a little bit of icing with some thicker cloud cover, a little bit of light precipitation between 8,000 and 16,000 feet along areas of the North Slope and eastern half of the Arctic coast. Checking the upper level jet stream winds here at 30,000 feet, we have dual core high center circulations there over the southwest and south central areas. Winds not especially strong aloft for 30,000 feet. And then as we drop down to the mid-level 700 millibars, 9,000 feet, we have the high centered right over the southwest. And that feature is going to be anchored there through the course of the holiday weekend, providing very warm and dry conditions across the southern half of the state. There could be some outflow winds in the vicinity of Yakutat area coming in as a result of the broader circulation around this high. As we get down to the 3,000 foot level, though, we do see the circulation kind of there between St. Paul and St. Matthew. And other than that, not much in the way of any wind or real turbulence issues expected there in the mainland, as except one little area. We could see some stronger, considerable moderate turbulence there coming in with the northeast flow off of the Yukon there in the mainland. There in the northeastern Gulf Coast, there surface to 5,000 feet. Otherwise, rest of the state looking fairly turbulent free, though there will be thermals with the warmer temperatures in the 70s across the southwest and south central parts of the state. So if you do get out this weekend, have a safe flight.
Floating hundreds of miles from Earth, astronauts get a unique perspective of our planet. While they might recognize landmarks, space is the only place they can see the very edge of our planet's atmosphere.
From orbit, particularly looking at the horizon, did bring to mind how thin the atmosphere is. It's like an onion skin around this great big ball of the Earth.
This uppermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, the ionosphere, also overlaps with the very beginning of space. It's the job of NASA's new mission, GOLD, the Global Scale Observations of the Limmendisk Instrument, to study this region, a region that isn't just for astronauts to explore, but that affects humans every day down on the ground. For one thing, this layer of the upper atmosphere helps protect us from harmful radiation and energy emanating from the sun. But in our modern society, it does so much more. It affects the smartphone that sits in your pocket and the radio waves that guide our airplanes. The ionosphere is a crucial layer of the atmosphere through which our communications and GPS signals travel. And when this region changes, it impacts those communication signals. Changes can occur above this region from the sun's activity, also known as space weather. Changes can also occur below from Earth's weather, such as hurricanes and wind patterns. Gold connects the dots between how space weather and Earth's weather shape the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But this region isn't easy to study. The ionosphere spans roughly 60 to 400 miles from Earth's surface, which is too high for aircraft and scientific balloons, and the lower regions are too low to easily study with satellites. What are attainable, however, are the swaths of red and green light shining out from the upper atmosphere. Formed when the sun's rays hit atmospheric molecules, this light, named airglow, comes from green and red bands of glowing gas. Some of the airglow is invisible to our eyes, shining in infrared and ultraviolet light, which can only be seen with scientific instrumentation. Taking advantage of our planet's natural glow is gold. The gold instrument, which is about the size of a mini-fridge, is hitching a ride on a commercial communication satellite, SES-14. The satellite's orbit lies 22,000 miles above Earth, where it can record images in ultraviolet light to monitor changes in airglow across the globe. These images give information on the temperature, density, and composition of particles in the upper atmosphere. Gold collects these observations faster than any mission has ever done before. It captures an image of Earth's entire disk every 30 minutes, allowing scientists to see how the upper atmosphere evolves throughout the day. Gold joins a host of missions studying the very nature of space around Earth, the Sun, and planets. As NASA ventures farther and farther from home, knowing the nature of space itself is crucial for our journey to understand our solar system and beyond.
There's a new class of chemical compounds impacting the Earth's ozone layer and raising concerns among some scientists. But a new NASA analysis indicates stratospheric ozone could actually be impacted more by climate change and the continued release of already banned chemicals. The Earth's ozone hole is showing signs of recovery, decades after the landmark agreement called the Montreal Protocol that banned many chemical compounds harmful to the ozone layer.
So we know the Montreal Protocol was a huge success. This was signed in the late 1980s when scientists and policymakers from around the world gathered together to try to save the ozone layer.
The chemicals they regulated persist in the atmosphere for many decades. They thin the ozone layer and they create a seasonal hole over Antarctica. They basically take away part of our planet's natural sunscreen, and that increases the risk of skin cancer and damage to plants.
Scientists have projected the ozone hole could disappear almost completely by about 2075, but several factors could delay that recovery.
There are some industrial compounds that are not banned by the Montreal Protocol, but as they enter the atmosphere, they will also hurt the ozone layer.
But the unregulated compounds have a short lifespan in the atmosphere, unlike the chlorofluorocarbons that were originally regulated. So they have a short-lived impact on ozone, and we don't think they'll delay recovery by more than a few years.
We projected by 2050, more than half of the ozone-depleting compounds in the atmosphere will come from long-lived substances banned by the protocol.
Because these compounds stay in the air for such a long time, compared to the unregulated, short-lived compounds, they will have a disproportionate and lingering impact on ozone. So any non-compliance with the protocol can have significant consequences.
And the really big uncertainty in ozone layer recovery is climate change. There are many naturally produced ozone-depleting substances that are emitted by the oceans. And as the oceans continue to warm due to climate change, those emissions will increase, and that will further delay ozone recovery.
Scientists want to better understand how climate change will affect ozone recovery.
This is a hard problem. As a scientific community, we need to work on this major issue. We now have a powerful new tool to simulate atmosphere and its interaction with land and ocean to study this issue. And that's what we're going to do.
How can you see the atmosphere? The answer is blowing in the wind. Tiny particles known as aerosols are carried by the air around the globe. This visualization uses data from NASA satellites combined with our knowledge of physics and meteorology to track 3 aerosols: dust, smoke, and sea salt. Sea salt, shown here in blue, is picked up by winds passing over the ocean. As tropical storms and hurricanes form, the salt particles are concentrated into the spiraling shape we all recognize. With their movements, we can follow the formation of Hurricane Irma and see the dust from the Sahara, shown in tan, get washed out of the storm center by the rain. Advances in computing speed allow scientists to include more details of these physical processes in their simulations of how the aerosols interact with the storm systems. The increased resolution of the computer simulation is apparent in fine details like the hurricane bands spiraling counterclockwise. Computer simulations let us see how different processes fit together and evolve as a system. By using mathematical models to represent nature, we can separate the system into component parts and better understand the underlying physics of each. Today's research improves next year's weather forecasting ability. Hurricane Ophelia was very unusual. It headed northeast, pulling in Saharan dust and smoke from wildfires in Portugal, carrying both to Ireland and the UK. This aerosol interaction was very different from other storms of the season. As computing speed continues to increase, scientists will be able to bring more scientific details into the simulations, giving us a deeper understanding of our home planet.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
We'll wrap up our show with a marine weather segment and looking at the sea ice edge. The ice continues to melt off and break up through the Bering Strait and through the lower Chukchi Sea. The Polinias that have opened up, there was a narrow one from Wainwright to just off of Utqiagvik that's kind of been pinched off in the last day or so. But we'll continue to see the ice melt and break up here as we head through the next several weeks leading up to the summer solstice. Across the southeast, looking at the panhandle here for marine weather, on Saturday, winds in the inner channels will be out of the north-northeast, 10 to 20 knots there, the length of Lynn Canal with waves maybe 3-4 feet. More southerly winds down toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, maybe perhaps an isolated shower still lingering down there across the south end of the panhandle, and winds generally out of the northwest along, north-northwest I should say, along the open waters of the Gulf Coast with waves running 4 or 5 feet. On Sunday, winds come down further. It'll be a very nice day, especially central northern panhandle, some 70-degree readings coming in. We'll see variable winds only around 5 knots with waves a foot or two. For the outer Gulf Coast, in through the open waters, look for northwesterly winds of 15 to 20 knots and waves running 6 to 7 feet. Across the northwestern Gulf, variable winds off the Kenai around 10 knots, waves 2-3 feet. Northwest winds in Prince William Sound to 15 knots, waves 2 feet. And then through the length of Cook Inlet, winds will generally be out of the north-northwest at 15 knots with waves of 2 to 3 feet. On Sunday, variable winds continue across the open waters of the northwestern Gulf at 10 knots, waves just a few feet. Prince William Sound, southwesterly 10 knots, 2-foot waves, and then a mix of winds up to 20 knots there in Cook Inlet, creating waves of 5 to 6 feet. And on Saturday, for Kodiak Island, we'll see 10-knot variable winds in Shelikof Strait, waves just a couple of feet. But as you get south of Kodiak Island, off the east side there of the Alaska Peninsula, North Pacific winds out of the west, 15 knots, waves 3-4 feet. And winds generally out of the west to northwest there on the Bering side at 15 knots with waves of 3 to 4 feet as well. Sunday, variable winds again around Shelikof Strait to 10 knots. Winds a bit more of a mix up to 15 knots on the North Pacific side of the peninsula with waves running around 4 feet. And variable winds around 10 knots with waves of 2 to 3 feet on the Bering side. Across the Aleutian chain, winds will be out of the northeast thanks to that high pressure centered there through the central Bering Sea. Northeasterly winds 15 knots, central eastern Aleutians, waves generally 4 to 5 feet region wide. And then on Sunday, still that theme continuing, maybe not quite becoming a little more variable on the North Pacific side, still northeasterly on the Bering side, Atka through Nikolsky and over toward Dutch Harbor, waves 3 to 4 feet. And then along the southwest coast, we'll see winds generally with a west to northwest component to 10 to 15 knots, waves 3-4 feet. And on Sunday, those winds will have more of a northerly component out of the north-northwest at 10 to 15 knots, with waves generally 2 to 3 feet there across the eastern portion of the Bering and off the southwest coast. Up along the Arctic coast, winds Saturday will generally be from the east at 5 to 10 knots with ice still in place. Along the northwest coast, they'll turn northerly down through the lower Chukchi Sea before turning westerly into Kotzebue Sound, and westerly passing south there of the Bering Strait, 15 knots and waves running where there is some open water, maybe 2 to as much as 3 or 4 feet. On Sunday, winds will be more westerly along the Arctic coast. Again, inclement conditions continuing with some areas of light snow and fog. Winds 5 to 15 knots. 15-knot westerly winds down along the northwest coast, and generally northwesterly winds there into Kotzebue Sound, passing through the Bering Strait, and on the north side of St. Lawrence Island at about 10 knots with waves running only a foot or two where there are some areas of open water. Looking at the synoptic map for Saturday, we have the high centered over the central Bering Sea. Along the west coast, we have areas of fog. We also have fog and lower clouds out over the open waters of the Gulf. There will be a weak thermal low develop with the warmer temperatures there up toward Fairbanks, Yukon Flats area through the course of the weekend. Weak troughiness lingers along the Kenai down through the east side of the Alaska Peninsula. And then on Sunday, we'll continue to see a weak thermal low up there near the Yukon Flats with perhaps a few isolated showers and maybe even a thunder shower popping up with the heating. And otherwise, areas of fog and low cloudiness continuing out over the cooler waters of the Bering Sea and the Gulf. Everyone, have a good holiday weekend, and may it be a reflective one.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.